Welcome to the Lexington Community Coalition Resource Show. We're here today with Eamon Sheehan, who is the coordinator of physical education and wellness for kindergarten through to grade 12s within the Lexington public school system. And as you know, we begin these shows by asking questions of many of the community members here in Lexington to provide information and resources for the rest of our community. So you have a better understanding of how Lexington works, how the school system works, what resources are available to you, all of that good stuff. So today we're here with Eamon. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you for having me.
And
appreciate it.
as I said in my intro, you're responsible for kindergarten through grade 12
correct,
in
yeah.
Lexington Public School. That's a huge responsibility. Can you give our viewers an overview of what you do?
Sure. So my overall responsibility obviously is for overseeing the curriculum and also supervising all of the faculty within the department. That's physical education, health education, and also our K through 12 prevention program. So that's the overall. Then it's managing budget, doing supervision and evaluation. And we also have a community aspect to what we do. We have our SHAC group, which is the School Health Advisory Council, where we have a community school meetings that take place 4 times a year, and we talk about where is the overlap between community and school related issues that relate to physical education and health education and overall wellness. We also partner with the LCC, Lexington Community Collaboration, and we have a representation there where we deal with what are the community and school related issues that are pertinent to the Lexington area. So that's a very brief overview, but it's a great position to be in. I'm very excited to be here. I feel very privileged to be in Lexington because of the amount of support that we get from the community, from the school district, from our administration. It really allows us to put what I think is a very strong and effective program in place.
Okay, that does sound huge,
Yeah.
Huge responsibility. So we're going to try to walk through the different areas you've
Sure.
mentioned. So you mentioned physical education, a little bit health education, briefly. Prevention you mentioned, but also you talked about this overwhelming or this overriding wellness concept.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, they're not quite sure what wellness means. It seems intangible.
Sure.
Is it something that you could help define?
Sure. I think it's a mindset, but it's also practicing that mindset. And wellness means different things to different people because of where their mindset or where their interests lie. But I think the overarching feeling is that you have to embrace the notion that it's the healthy mind, healthy body notion, and participating in just making thoughtful choices about your life, whether it's nutrition, whether it's physical activity, whether it's how you treat other people. I think all those things, they all coalesce into your sense of wellness. So it's not about one thing, it's that overarching umbrella notion of what foundations do you lay early on in your life to embrace and continue the notion of wellness. And it also brings in the sense of balance in your life. Knowing when to take breaks, knowing how to balance your work, beyond school or even school itself, that school life balance, the work life balance. What are you doing to take care of yourself? And then how does that translate into how you take care of others and how you treat others? So there are many facets to it. It's socio-emotional, it's physical, and I think by finding your own niche and what works for you is really what the whole notion of wellness is about. And then what kind of supports are in place that will help you to find that balance and that notion of wellness in life.
So how does that show up within the school system? So we talk about this wellness, this balance, this understanding, how you work, your mindset. How does it show up in courses? Is it modeled by teachers? Is there some particular curriculum that we follow? Can you
Sure.
give an idea?
I guess in our department, we obviously deal with the physical and the mental, socio-emotional part of it. We definitely encourage physical activity through our physical education classes, but it's not just about physical activity. It's about your own self-awareness, your awareness of others, awareness of space, how you treat others in a physical activity setting, and how that translates to how you treat others outside of, we'll say, the physical education class. And that starts from the K level right up through 12. That's one of our major emphasis, is about that social interaction and just being present. When it comes to health education, it's just an extension of what we do there, where we are getting our students to reflect on what are good, healthy activities. It starts with the fundamentals at the elementary level, where we talk about nutrition, about being physically active, about disease prevention, about being safe. And then we kind of build on that, on notions about mindfulness, just talking about how you can center yourself, how you can do some very simple and fundamental things to de-stress when you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, because it happens to all of us at some point. So it's about continuous building and reinforcing of those notions as we work through all the different grade levels and different levels through elementary, middle, and high school.
Is there an example you could give us of something that's done in the elementary and how it sort of evolves through middle school and then high school, just to give a
Sure.
concrete?
I think one of the things that we very casually but effectively introduce is, as part of, we'll say, a physical education class warm-up routine. A lot of our elementary teachers, they actually introduce some very basic yoga principles into the warm-up routine. So it's not just about, okay, yes, we do want kids to get warmed up, get physically active, increase their heart rate and so on, which is all very beneficial to the body and to the mindset. But then part of it is, okay, let's center ourselves, let's think about breath, breath awareness, talk about just sitting still and being in control and just being mindful of that. And then that kind of translate up to the middle school and the high school level, where our students can actually take many options around mindful related courses such as yoga, Pilates, mind-body mechanics that we offer as physical education electives. So that would be one small example, but obviously we also just try and reinforce the notion of being respectful when we're interacting with others. So if they were doing some kind of partner activity or game activity, a lot of the emphasis is not about the winning or losing, but just about being respectful, playing fair, and continuing that notion right through all the levels, that people know that, yes, you want to challenge yourself, you want to push yourself. There is that notion that you do want to be the winner, but the bigger thing is taking away the joy of activity and the benefits that being active and interacting with others brings to you. So there would be a couple of examples.
Have you received any feedback from either the teachers or the community or the students themselves in terms of how this overall wellness is being received or
Sure.
modeled?
I think a lot of it is when I go to observe all my teachers, what I do is I observe the level of engagement of each class and the number of kids who are actively engaged in the activities, whether it's a health education class or whether it's a physical education class. So I think first-hand observation, when you see the amount of activity and engagement that takes place in the classes, it's a good overview for me to know that things are working, and that when we look at some of the intervention blocks, the I blocks, the win blocks, the flex blocks that take place in the middle and the high school, just the number of kids that actually sign up to come to these extra blocks to do physical activities is an indication of how they view the program overall. So I think that would be one. We also do we have done at the high school level, just feedback on the elective offerings that we do there, and we did our own kind of in-house survey about 4 or 5 years back, and the overwhelming response, it was very positive about the options that were offered for all of our students. and also I think it was 85 to 90 percentile where they felt very positive about feeling safe and feeling comfortable attending the classes that they do choose. So I think some of it too is that we're very fortunate that we can offer so many different elective options, especially at the high school level, where we give our students anywhere from 10 to 12 options per quarter to choose from. So we like to think there's something for everybody, knowing that not all types of activities or all types of interactions is a good fit for every student. So we have to acknowledge that as well and make those adaptations.
Right, right. Okay, so let's move into physical education.
Sure.
Everybody is very familiar with PE. We all
Yep.
grew up with
Yep.
gym. I certainly remember the
Sure.
jungle gym, my favorite.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through once again, because a lot of our viewers may be new to Lexington
Yep.
or just not as involved and not aware of what is provided with
Sure.
physical education. Can you give us an overview of what is provided for the elementary versus the middle school and how it may change or morph in the high school?
Yep. So at the elementary and middle school level in particular, it is planned through the activities. So if we're starting at elementary level, K classes, our focus is really on spatial awareness, self-awareness, self-control, developing those gross and fine motor skills. So a lot of it, when we start with our kindergarten level kids, when they come in late August, early September, a lot of the early classes are just about getting our students just to be aware of what are some of the movement skills that you need to do in order to be able to then translate that into more fine motor skills. So we'll do a lot of just balance, change of direction, being aware of when you do change direction where your other classmates are, you're not running into them. So a lot of that is just fundamentals. And then you gradually build on that where we do more coordinated skills. So you're kind of breaking down, we'll say, the elements of a throwing action where you make the proper shape with your arm, that L shape, you're stepping and throwing your eye on the target. So we're sequentially building in those skills. And by the time they're going into the upper grades, 2, 3, 4, and 5, then they can translate those fundamentals into activities where they're working in small groups or small challenge games. But there are also individual activities where we do some fitness testing through a program called FitnessGram. And the purpose of that is just to give each individual student some feedback on where they are with their fitness levels. The levels it's a national norm, so they do things like pacer runs to test aerobic fitness and their cardiovascular endurance, and also upper and lower body muscle testing. And it's not about how you compare really against your classmates, but where you are within a standard that is a recommended standard for your age group. So it just gives us nice feedback as well, that if we see that there's one area where maybe aerobic endurance might be an issue, that we can just kind of then just shift our focus to a little bit more on that, maybe doing warm-up routines and stuff like that. As we go to the middle school level, obviously then you're building on some of the skills you've learned, and that students definitely have an opportunity then to try a little bit more individual level activities. So we have fitness centers in both middle schools, and each student has the opportunity to work throughout all the fitness center, explore the different types of strength training and aerobic activities that are available. And then once they develop that knowledge, we encourage them then to devise what they think would be their own kind of fitness plan that they work on. So it's self-paced, and they're working on goals that they set themselves. They may set these goals in the fall, and they'll upload their progress through their iPads and through Google Forms and so on, and then they can look back at their portfolio at the end of the year and see, okay, I started here, this is where I ended up. We also do some of the more traditional games like volleyball, kickball, basketball skills. So we're trying to build on all, it's a whole activity skill, so that they're exposed to as many different activities as possible. And they still integrate some of the yoga, mindfulness techniques as part of the warm-up. Once we get to the high school level, that's when we think it becomes really exciting for our students because we have 10 to 12 options every quarter that we allow our students to choose from. So it's really very much student-driven at the high school level. We can start with recreational games where we do some of the maybe non-traditional activities like bocce ball, ping pong, and we do a little bit of orienteering work. So it's that less competitive, but still activity based. We have yoga and Pilates. We do flag football. We do tennis and games. We do badminton. And then we go into, as we move indoors, we do a lot of around individual fitness concepts, strength and fitness. We do cardio kickboxing, fencing, rollerblading. So it's a pretty wide range of activities, and we always think that there's always something for every student that will grab their attention and get them wanting to come back for more. So it's not so much about what they achieve athletically, it's about the participation and the affect, what they take away from that experience. So that's what we're really focused on. Is this something you enjoy doing? Is it something we can encourage you to continue to explore once you graduate from grade 12?
Can I just say, when I was in high school, my choice of diversity was square dancing and Jane Fonda workout. So I just want to say, I'm aging myself here, but
I hear you. But I think that's part of the challenge that a lot of physical education programs face, is that the parent experience has been the traditional experience of gym. They made us do laps. They made us do push-ups, and it should not be about that. It should be about we want to get that physical and literacy to get them to understand and experience the joy of movement. And we hope that that physical education translates to physical activity outside of the school setting, and that they will continue to do that, and know that as well, that it's not about athletic achievement. It's really about knowing where your points of interest are and committing to taking some of those lessons you learned beyond the high school and college experience. We like to tell our high school students that take our strength and fitness concept classes that, hey, when you walk into Boston Sports Club, you don't need to hire a trainer. You know how to use all the equipment. You know how to plan a strength training or an aerobic or a cardio training routine, and that you have all the fundamental skills to do it on your own, as opposed to feeling intimidated when you walk into this big, huge sports club that you're wondering how you use all this equipment. So that's one of the an example of what we think might be a life skill that students will take away from our program.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think what you're suggesting here as well, with respect to the diversity that they have in the high school, certainly to gravitate towards what interests them and what makes them feel like they're more play versus I have to achieve this, I have to get this marker. From my work, I know that people that play are more, their minds have settled. And so it sort of circles back to the whole wellness concept.
Yeah, we think it's an important part of wellness, but again, we are the converted ones. So that therein lies the problem, I suppose. But when we look at how physical activity affects the brain, a lot of studies have been done around how physical activity actually can improve learning. And a lot of studies have been done where they have actually proved that there's empirical evidence that physical activity is a correlation between aerobic physical activity and improved learning for students right after that. They've done studies where they've brought students into an aerobic related activity as their first class in the morning, and then they schedule students for their more challenging classes after that. And while it doesn't make you smarter, it essentially prepares the brain for a better learning experience. And they've found the scientific evidence to see this, and they've seen increases of 15 to 20% in learning and assessments when students actually do this aerobic and physical activity as part of their entrance into the school in the morning. So, and that's one area. The other areas where they found it really effective is obviously when you're getting that endorphin kick and that oxygen kick into the brain. It settles the mind, and it also it's just overall well-being. So when you have that, also they found as well, it's very effective in dealing with ADD-related issues and focus levels. That when you are feeding the brain, that the brain is more prepared and more settled to focus on the day's tasks ahead of you. So, but again, it's just one aspect of the whole wellness notion. But it's definitely an area that it kind of permeates out there without being the part of the traditional core subjects where obviously that is still the focus, but it kind of infiltrates its way into
Certainly.
many areas.
Yeah, it definitely supports it.
Yeah.
In terms of you mentioned the fitness centers that you have in the middle schools. Are they consistent? Are they the same in both middle schools?
Very similar.
Yeah.
They have a wide variety of cardio equipment, from treadmills to elliptical machines to bikes, to some free weights, to then some what we call selectorized weights, where you have the weight machines. And so all of them have a similar level of equipment. I'm very mindful that I want to provide as similar an opportunity for all students across all schools. And then obviously we have a little bit more space at the high school, so it's a little bit larger, but it's the same similar concept where we don't want our students walking into our fitness centers feeling intimidated that, oh, look at all these lifting racks and all these heavy plate loaded weights and so on. There's something there for everybody, whether it's you just want to set yourself a basic aerobic or cardio goal, you get an elliptical machine, you try out some of the steppers, you try out some of the bikes, or you want to challenge yourself a bit more and you want to work with some general body strength, then you have those options available to you as well. So there's a nice balance that it's a fitness center, it's not what we call a traditional weight room.
Right.
So
I remember that too.
Yeah, so there's...
Okay. And in terms of the elementary schools, because we have quite a few, is the curriculum the same for every elementary school, or is there leeway?
There is leeway. The curriculum is the same in that I think the outcomes for each school are going to be the same. How they actually schedule the activities they want to schedule, I like to leave that up to each school, because each school has a different nuances and what facilities they have available and how it works for each teacher. But the overall outcome is that by the end of the 5th grade, they've all covered the same activities, same curriculum, same outcomes and goals are achieved. But as to how they schedule those activities during the school year, I give that autonomy to the teachers, because each school just slightly different nuances, and what works in one school at a particular time of year may not work at the other school. And the great thing about all levels at the elementary level is that we do have our PLCs, professional learning communities, and all our elementary phys ed teachers, they meet at least once a month, where they all kind of say, hey, what are you doing? How's this working out for you? I've been trying this, not really working. So they really are a great team, that they really work very effectively together.
Wonderful. Okay, let's swing into health education.
Sure. Yeah.
Now this one is a little bit, there's some differences between elementary and high school and middle school. So it's my understanding that we used to have health education within the elementary schools, and then that was done away with. And currently, from what I understand, there is one class provided in grade 5 on puberty. Is that correct?
A little bit more than that.
Okay.
But,
explain.
So we have, when the health education was removed around 2006 from the elementary level, part of our previous curriculum review process was to find a way to reintroduce health education, but we were obviously constrained just by our inability to bring back our health education teachers at that time. So we took kind of a hybrid approach, where we planned some health education classes that will be done through our physical education classes. So they're physical activity based, but the concepts thought were focused on health education outcomes. And where we focused on really was on nutrition, personal safety, disease prevention, and so they were kind of the 3 main areas. And so we planned some lessons around that. There's about approximately 8 lessons per year that our physical education teachers teach, and they're all activity based. So an example would be, we would talk about nutrition, and we would have all these little bean bags of different types of foods. Our what we call our always foods would be those healthy vegetables and grains and so on. Sometimes foods, and probably very sometimes foods, would be kind of some of the more less healthy foods. And we would, an example of that then would be a tag game, where kids would identify what the healthier foods are, and they would play a tag game. If they were tagged by the less healthy or the sometimes foods, that then they would have to be saved by an always or a healthy food. So it's just developing some of those concepts and then giving them some very basic assessments on identifying what would be more of a healthy diet, really, and combine that with activity. So there were some of the phys ed classes we do. They're all activity based. We didn't want to take away from the physical activity time because it's only 60 minutes per week, but we were able to reasonably well integrate them into our phys ed classes. We also then have our partner with our nurses to present the puberty, human growth, and sexuality videos at the 5th grade level. So that's between classroom and our nursing staff. And we also have our counselors who are beginning to introduce some of the social emotional learning concepts, and they've been able to get some time from principals this year. But a lot of social emotional learning is part of the health education curriculum as well, where we are talking about being aware, being mindful, just dealing with mental health issues, dealing with social interactions, social media. So all of those are part of the health education curriculum. So, and we also have our prevention specialist who brings peer leaders down from the middle and high school level, and they speak to our 5th graders in particular around areas of bullying, refusal skills, around if they're alcohol, even at that level, so that they're practicing how to process what is thoughtful decisions and how to step away from situations that might put them at risk.
Yes. Okay, so you've mentioned some of the social emotional concepts. We've talked about that a bit in some of the other resource shows that where we've talked to different teachers. It kind of brings in the whole youth risk behavior survey results that we've seen, and certainly we've given the survey to the middle school and the high school. We haven't touched the elementary school yet, but you've been around for 9 years or so?
I've been in this position since 2008, but I've been actually in the system since, I'm dating myself, 1999.
I did too, don't worry.
So I've had many, I've kind of morphed into different positions during the course of my time here, but in the coordinator position since 2008.
Okay.
So great thing about our YRBS, and this is, I have to give kudos to previous health education coordinator, Jennifer Wolfram. Jennifer was a great driver of this, and we've been able to really customize our YRBS since 1995. So we have a lot of linear data at the high school level, and we can really examine Lexington-specific trends. And when we started noticing trends, we started kind of pivoting towards asking more questions around the trends that we saw. Obviously, we have less information at the middle school level because we've only done 2 sessions of the YRBS, but we can still see similar trends, and obviously you can draw certain inferences from the trends that you're seeing. So yes, we always, our big sticking point always is the alcohol use in terms of...
Well, can you just go over some of the trends that you, just so everybody's on the same page?
Sure. So I guess we'll start with alcohol use. Is obviously, it just kind of stays at a certain level. It's a little bit higher than obviously state levels and so on. And despite the fact that we do a lot of focus on it at the high school level with our health education classes in particular, it still seems to just kind of hold that plateau at, or just ticks up or ticks down slightly every 2 years. The other end of things is the positive end is that use of other drugs such as marijuana or other addictive drugs is much lower than state averages. So smoking is very, very low. So there's a lot of positives with that. We're way below state and national levels in those areas. Some of the other obviously sticking points that we're also very much aware of is mental and academic health. There's a variety of factors. Some of it is our students being worried about life after LHS. and what they're going to do next. There is a certain level of perceived and actual academic competition that takes place, and it leads, and there's also, their students put a lot of expectations on themselves as well, because we are a high achieving academic school system, and with that comes its own kind of set of expectations that kind of, to my mind, it feeds itself. And again, it comes back to that notion of striking that balance between knowing that, yes, you want to challenge and extend yourself, but not to the point where you're feeling that you're totally stressed. So we're also seeing a slight uptick in suicide ideation, and a lot of it is related to its academic stress, it's home and community stressors, the life after college planning. So it's not just one area, but it's a combination of different stressors that can cause the overall mental health issues. The other side of it, though, is that for the most part, not all, obviously we can always do better, but like I said, smoking levels are way lower. Students feel like at the high school level that they are, for the most part, they're respected by their teachers and they feel respected by their peers. But there are pockets that we obviously need to improve upon. So it's not all bad news. There is a lot of positive areas as well. And also when we ask students how they actually cope, listening to music, physical activity are always two of the very areas that they choose to de-stress themselves and to self-manage, along with just doing some mindfulness and yoga techniques. So it's a combination of always challenges ahead, and when we focus on one area, not taking our eye off the areas where we are successful in, and continue to drive the positive aspects along with driving and looking at and trying to address the areas that we need to address.
So I'm just going to throw this out
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
We started off talking about wellness,
Yeah.
and the wellness that you infuse within the atmosphere of the schools and the teachers and how they engage with the students and so on. It seems to me that the idea of wellness, beautiful, it's in the elementary, it's in the middle, it's in the high school. Yep. The health component, which could address mental wellness, yep, which folds into wellness, is missing from grades kindergarten through 6 to middle school, and it's middle school and high school are the ones where we're looking at this survey, yep, and we're noticing these trends. Not to put you on the spot, sure, but would it be supportive of wellness, of supporting our students in the elementary level so that they are able to manage and cope and understand what's going on in their minds as they get in the upper years? Would it be helpful and supportive to reinstate some kind of health education in those years?
Absolutely. I mean, again, we firmly believe that the elementary level, like all other disciplines, this is where you lay the foundations for student success at the middle and high school level. And I fully get the big picture of there's only so many school hours in the day, and there are many competing areas that are, they hold equal sway around what we want our kids to be able to do and know by the time they graduate from Lexington High School. But some of the essential foundations do occur at the elementary level. And while our physical education teachers touch on this and being mindful and being aware of breath, again, it's incidental and it's not consistent. It's always a challenge when the first true health education class that you get is at the 7th grade level. So you've lost you're really trying to backtrack and double back on some of the issues. Now, it's not that our counseling staff are great with their social emotional learning curriculum, and they support that. Our nursing staff support that. Our administrators support that to that level. But again, they're trying to also think big picture on what else they have to deal with on a daily basis. So having dedicated health education classes and teachers at the elementary level and laying those foundations and get them to be thoughtful and mindful about thoughtful decision making, how to manage, how to self-manage, and how to be just be safe and be aware. I think all those things are essential at the elementary level. But just trying to juggle everything and fit it into those slots is always a challenge. And but I think it can be done. It's just a matter of we shifting and knowing that, yeah, it's not an MCAS subject. It's not an SAT subject where we test you on, are you practicing some kind of a wellness, have you mindful of wellness practices, but it kind of permeates out through stuff like YRBS. We had a quick look at some of our YRBS data from 3 to 4 years out from when our elementary health education was cut. And again, it's a very loose inference. I will be the first to admit that. But we did see trends 4 to 6 years out after elementary health was cut, that the trends are in some of the risky behaviors where there was an uptick. And we can draw the inference. The only way we can do that is bring back health education and see 6 to 8 years out. Were we successful? Was it the elementary health education model successful in addressing some of these issues at an earlier time, where students had some of those life skills in order to deal with the challenges that, with social media in particular, it's a huge challenge for us now. And we see our elementary students, a lot of them already have multiple access points to social media, their own personal iPhones and so on, and computers, computer games. So being able to make decisions around how they react to all those different things, we think is an essential component of that whole student or whole child education.
Right, I agree. And we're seeing it, the social media aspect certainly is beginning younger and younger.
Absolutely.
And are we prepared, and do we know how to deal with that? Certainly a lot of kids, when they're on their videos, they're on their iPhones, they're completely engaged in social media so many times, their minds are just going all the time. And with a busy mind, we know there's a direct link to their levels of anxiety or pressure.
Absolutely. And also, the problem with social media to a certain extent is you're just jumping from one 30-second soundbite to another.
Absolutely.
And I just wonder how that just deals with their ability to focus and retain resiliency and focus, because there are constant distractors popping up on their iPhones and their computers. But also, like you said, the busy mind, they never have a time to actually regulate themselves and just kind of be present with themselves, as opposed to, okay, what's going on, who's texting about what, who's Instagramming, who's Snapchatting. So there has to be, again, it's up to us to at least make them aware of that, but I think there's also a community and family obligation. And I have 2 teenagers that we constantly struggle and battle with about getting off phones and getting off computers and getting off games. And despite the fact that I'm a phys ed and health and wellness, trying to get them to move and be active at times, even from at home.
Chase them.
I just have to do something. So, but it comes from that whole community notion that, yes, we got to get them just off that social media and be mindful about what they're seeing and processing it in a thoughtful manner. So it's very important.
And certainly one of the things I've got my eye on is with the social media and everything, as you say, everything is going so quickly, and they're being diverted from this to this to this. It's almost as if they've detached themselves from the true pace of life, that life isn't actually going like this. And so are we now seeing trends of when life slows down or when they're not doing things like that, oh, it's boring. Life's boring.
I think you will get some of that because, again, you're pulling out your phone, you're constantly being stimulated by something, whether it's a Twitter feed, whether it's an Instagram, a Snapchat, whether you're just checking something on the web or on YouTube. So it's constant stimulation. And I think saying, put your phone down, let's get you doing something that you like, that's going to be phone free. I think just committing to that and going electronics or digital free for a certain period of time is certainly beneficial, and it just they have to figure it out. Sometimes I challenge my own kids to say, figure it out, do something that's electronics free. And sometimes the two of them will just end up chatting and having fun and joking around with each other. Something as simple as that, where they're actually having a human interaction as opposed to a digital interaction with somebody.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be anything complicated that has to be constantly stimulating them outside of electronics, but it can just be human interaction, and the personal touch is definitely something that we all tend to lose track of it.
I think that's a great challenge, actually.
Absolutely. It sure is. Always. It's kind of, what do we do now?
I know, but the minute they get out of that, what do we do now? I don't have my phone. I feel like I'm naked. The minute they move past that space of not feeling comfortable, suddenly they move into a new space of, oh, this is actually fun and freeing, and my mind settles down, and I can just be. It's quite fascinating.
It is. So even just simple things from a home point of view, that your phones and electronics, they all stay downstairs at nighttime, and you're off from your time you go upstairs to either just settle, read a book for a while before you go to sleep, and you have that 8 to 9 hours of digital free time. Just start there and then work it.
To me, it's engaging in life, like real life.
Yeah,
you know,
it's the human touch. It's
absolutely,
the personal touch.
it cannot be replaced. Okay, now I want to pivot into, you're doing a curriculum review.
Yes, we are.
It happens every 3 years, I understand.
It's a 3-year process,
process.
The last one we finished in 2009.
Okay.
So it usually takes place every 7 to 10 years, depending on the cycle and who's up. So we were brought back into the curriculum review process. We just started this past fall, so we're in year 1. So we're just beginning to start our review process. So it's kind of a nuts to bolt K through 12 review of what we're doing, how it aligns with national, state, and our district developed standards. Are we hitting the essential standards that we really want our kids to take away, K through 12, and then identifying areas of strengths and weaknesses. So we're in that identifying area right now. We've looked at our curriculum. We've looked at some of the new state or national standards more so, and we're trying to see, okay, are we aligned? Is there areas that we are missing? We've also invited in an outside former Director of Physical Education and Health, Brian McNally. Brian used to actually work here as Director of Athletics and Physical Education way back, but he's been with Andover Public Schools and just retired this past June. So we invited Brian in to do a kind of an outside set of eyes on our program. Sometimes when you think you're doing a real great job, it's good to get somebody from the outside to say, here's what I saw, here's what I like, or here's what I think you could improve on. So a lot of it is just being honest with ourselves about what are we hitting really good and what are we missing. And so the process will develop, also visiting other school districts, see what they're doing. It's always good to get perspective and ideas from other schools, and sharing best practices. And once we identify areas that we need to work on or just want to improve, then we'll kind of develop and align our standards and our curriculum with those areas. And the hope is that embracing that notion that you don't want to blow up or reinvent the wheel. It's always just about tweaking things to make it better, and embracing that notion that you always want to just nudge things forward to see how things can be better. And sometimes that nudging forward ends up in total failure, but sometimes you'll learn more from what doesn't work than what actually does work. And I always encourage my faculty and department people, don't be afraid to fail. Try something, but as long as you know where things didn't work out and know what adjustments you need to make, that to me makes you an effective educator and somebody who's vested in what you want, what you're doing here. So it's a 3-year process, and it'll certainly it'll yield a lot of positive outcomes, and hopefully maybe even elementary health education will return at some point. But we'll keep the fingers crossed.
Yes. So. Who are the parties involved? You mentioned Brian. You're obviously involved.
Yeah, so Brian was our kind of outside consultant. Julie Fenn, who is the assistant coordinator of physical education, health and wellness. She's coordinating with me, and then I've invited approximately 12 members of the department to do a review. I have 2 adaptive physical education teachers. I have 2 elementary phys ed teachers, and then I have 4 teachers from the middle school, phys ed and health, and then we have a combination of phys ed and health teachers from the high school. So we want everybody looking at each level, and then let's align it K through 12 to see, okay, is there that sequential progression that's taking place? Sometimes you think something is happening, but when you actually examine it, maybe say, oh, we're kind of missing a little connection here, so how do we bridge those gaps? But and then just seeing where that vertical alignment takes place, and are we getting the outcomes that we're looking for at the end of each grade level and the end of each of the different of the 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school. So
do the students have any voice in this, or?
We will eventually.
Yeah.
We're year 1 is usually just kind of doing our research, but we'll certainly do an outreach to our students and get feedback from them as to what we think they're seeing and what they may actually be seeing can often be 2 different things. So we'll definitely do some student surveys to get some feedback from them on where we think or where they think that we could actually do better as well. Because it's always, you can get all this positive feedback, but if you actually let them give their opinions, sometimes it'll just bubble some things to the surface that you say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, and it's something that we can work on and make work within our program.
Okay, fabulous.
Yeah.
Is there anything the community can do to support your efforts?
I guess a lot of it is just, I know that there's always a focus on academic achievement, but knowing that the peripheral disciplines also have an important role to play in developing the whole child. And I'd also have to give a shout out to areas like our nursing department, like our counseling department, like our performing and fine arts people. All those are parts of the sum of the parts, along with our physical education, health education, and prevention programs that develop that whole child education experience. And just getting the community to understand that if we lay the foundations with health education, we have a strong foundation with the physical education program at the elementary level, but if we can lay some of the foundations with health education, and if we can get that advocacy going and understanding that the payoff will be in middle and high school level, where kids have a little bit more resiliency around healthy decision making and being able to deal with social media issues, stress issues, academic stress, social interactions, and so on, that the payoff is can often be a little bit harder to measure because we're not giving them an actual test. Because if we give them a test on how you're feeling today and you're using all these mental and stress reduction, they're going to check off, yes, I do it, because they're the answers we want to give them. So it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit harder to, so you have to be a bit more subtle on how you actually go about measuring and assessing the effectiveness of the program. So anonymous surveys like YRBS and so on does allow some of our students to be a bit more open with how they actually feel about their school experience. So, but yes, community support is always gratefully appreciated, and we obviously appreciate the great amount of support we have gotten from the community. I think it's evident in the strength of the program that we have here and the strength of all our programs. And but again, we won't say no to further advocacy for our, in particular, our health education programs.
Heard.
Thank you.
And just so, I want to thank you so much. This has been a very enlightening
Appreciate
conversation. I appreciate your time and expertise.
Thank you.
And just so you know, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but also our audience, that Lexington Coalition, Community Coalition, has coffees typically once a month, where we welcome new members or members who have been in Lexington, community members who have been in Lexington but aren't aware of all of the resources available to them. So the next one is actually February 14th. So it typically takes place at the community center. Just check things out, ask somebody, and look for February 14th for our coffees.
Sure.
In the meantime, thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks.